Yeah, you sequence the dodo's genome, but you're working with a pigeon, which is the closest living relative, to build a reference genome. And they're working on genetically modified chickens to act as surrogates for the dodos. Surrogates to give birth to dodos. I wonder if what you're going to get at the end of all this is actually a dodo. Every so often, and there go the cats. Every so often, I like to have some fun with something that is strange and seems to go from science to science fiction, just to have some fun and get off some of the serious topics. And this most definitely fits the bill. The de-extinction of the dodo takes another step closer to reality. IFL Science. If you don't know, the dodo bird is an extinct bird, which sometimes there are some classic euphemisms around the dodo bird and extinction. I gotta see if I can't find them. Just to satisfy my curiosity real quick here. But anyway, yeah. Dead as a dodo is the common phrase, a euphemistic phrase that involves the dodo bird. I just had to find it real so I could confirm it there, but there has been this kind of talk in terms of science being able to revive or resurrect animals that have long gone extinct, which also gives me major Jurassic Park vibes, actually. So I figured we could have some fun with this today from I Fucking Love Science, or iflscience.com. The mission to resurrect the dodo from extinction has just been given a boost thanks to a new partnership between Colossal Biosciences, a genetic engineering and de-extinction company. Fun name. Fun type of company. Didn't know that existed. And the Maritan, don't know how to pronounce that, Wildlife Foundation, a non-profit conservative organization that works, conservation organization that works closely with the Mauritian government. The de-extinction of the dodo is one of the central interests of Colossal's avian genomics group. With the help of the Mauritian Wildlife Foundation's expertise in avian rescue and field monitoring, the project will now attempt to restore the dodo's native habitats on the island of Mauritius, off the east coast of Africa. After all, there's no point of reviving the species if it doesn't have a suitable home. Okay, so in other words, we're trying to give it a place to live first, and then bring it back somehow. Colossal's de-extinction projects are only successful if the animals are rewilded and brought back to their natural habitat. We look forward to working with Mauritius to ensure this happens with the dodo, Matt James, Colossal's chief animal officer, said in a statement sent to IFL Science. Dodos fell into extinction around the 17th century when Europeans arrived in Mauritius during the age of colonization. As chilled-out flightless birds that nested on the ground, the species became easy targets for hunters as well as the predatory animals they introduced to the island, like dogs, cats, pigs, rats, and crab-eating macaws. There we go. Their population quickly plummeted. The last confirmed sighting of a live dodo was in 1662, although statistical analysis suggests they held on as far as 1690. Either way, it's near certain there were no dodos left by the 1700s. Dead as a dodo, as it were. And again, this is a interesting and fundamental question as to whether or not you can revive it and what would happen if you did. There's a lot of interesting ethical questions about what you do to an ecosystem if you're trying to revive a species that's been dead or extinct for good over 300 years at this point. Something in the neighborhood of 350 years, I think. Close to that, a little shy of that. Between 300 and 350 years, for sure. I think it's 1690. Yeah, 1690, that would put it, 300 would put it into 1990. Yeah, 333 years. It's been dead for 333 years. This is a question because a lot of the ecosystems in that thing where it was native have probably changed pretty significantly. So it is an interesting question mark in terms of like scientific ethics and ethics dealing with an ecosystem and all that jazz with regards to what it would do if you were to reintroduce an extinct species somehow. Never mind the ethical question of whether or not you should try and bring it back to life. Total other thing. Let us continue. Leading the mission to bring back the dodo is Dr. Beth Shapiro, a colossal scientific advisory board member who was the first scientist to fully sequence the dodo's genome. The team is currently working with the primordial germ cells of the Nicobar pigeon, the closest living relative of the dodo, to build a reference genome. In tandem, they are also developing genetically modified chickens to act as surrogates for the dodos. So, I don't know. Just a curiosity question. Does that make the dodo a cross between a chicken and a pigeon? Or the new dodo a cross between the chicken and the pigeon? I don't know. Anyway, speaking to IFL Science earlier this year, the founder and CEO of Colossal Biosciences, Ben Lamb, explained how these are all fundamental steps toward the de-extinction of a species. First, you need to look at what is the closest phylogenetic relative. What is the animal that is still existing on the planet that is the closest on the family tree? Lamb told IFL Science, you need to find the closest phylogenetic relative because you've got to find and build a reference genome, and you need tissue samples to do that. Then you've got to get tissue samples containing the ancient DNA of those extinct species. Ancient DNA is different from existing living DNA because it's massively fragmented. It's not all exogenous, meaning that there are other microbes and living things that have contaminated it over time. So you get snippets of the ancient DNA and you basically piece them together, Lamb added. Okay. I'm curious. I'm curious if it's messed up and it's fragmented and you're creating a reference genome and you're hoping to use chickens as surrogates, reference genome of from a pigeon, you have the ancient DNA, then you have the chickens as surrogates. How do you know you're not just creating something else or trying to create something else? This is just a random thought, but that's what I get reading it. Physical remains of dodo birds are surprisingly rare to find. If you've ever been to a museum with a stuffed taxidermy dodo, there's a good chance it's not real. Well, yeah. I mean, this fur and feathers and everything would have decayed over time, and goodness knows if we have enough bones. Fortunately, some tissues do exist. For instance, DNA extracted from a skull in the collection of the Natural History Museum in Denmark was used to piece together the whole genome by Dr. Shapiro and her team. Extinct creatures aren't the only concern for Colossal. Their avian genomics group is also investigating the genetic rescue of the pink pigeon, a vulnerable pigeon also endemic to Mauritius. Mauritius? I honestly am not sure how to pronounce it, but I'm guessing it's actually Mauritius. Just 500 or so pink pigeons are left on Mauritius, and the population is suffering from severe lack of genetic diversity. Using historical samples of the birds and gene editing techniques, Colossal aims to re-inject the dwindling population with lost genetic diversity. If it works, perhaps the pink pigeons will be able to avoid the same fate as their dodo cousins. There is... Actually, you know what? I kind of agree with that first comment. It's a terrible term. De-extinction is a terrible term for something that will never happen. You can't recreate an extinct population. That's what I wonder. I do wonder, are you really going to get back to the actual dodo? Or are you inadvertently creating something else? Because I go back to this and I'm like, let me think. I go back to, where is it? Where's the thing? Yeah. You sequence the dodo's genome, but you're working with a pigeon, which is the closest living relative, to build a reference genome. And they're working on genetically modified chickens to act as surrogates for the dodos. surrogates to give birth to dodos. I wonder if what you're going to get at the end of all this is actually a dodo. Which, goodness knows, this is strange. This is just strange. I don't know, honestly, what I think of this. But I also do, I do wonder about the ethical concerns of doing such a thing as this, particularly if you do succeed to, if you do actually get a dodo, let's say, at the end of this, and you reintroduce it to an ecosystem, what is that going to do to the ecosystem that's already in place? I don't know that anybody's thought about that. Because you can't just reintroduce something after an ecosystem has evolved and grown and changed for 333 years after it went extinct and expect that it's going to be exactly the same ecosystem and exactly the same habitat when it is highly likely not to be. Even if you go about, restoring the habitat to a particular thing, it's very difficult to keep it that way. And then the whole thing is, if you are doing all this and you don't actually end up with a dodo, then you do really have some ethical things to think about to whether or not you can reintroduce whether or not you can introduce an artificially created species of something, be some kind of bird because of all the birds involved, but reintroduce that to a space, to a natural ecosystem. This is where you get into some ethical things about how much man should play God, which I'm kind of like, I think there are certain things we shouldn't be messing around with. The idea of reintroducing genetic diversity to an existing species, I think that's okay because you're helping it live, hopefully. But this is trying to bring back something that's dead, or inadvertently creating something else, and then reintroducing it to an ecosystem that's evolved and changed over time. It's a fascinating sort of philosophical thing, and of course, if you can do it, it is a remarkable scientific achievement. Nobody would deny it. But yeah, I don't know about this one. I really don't know about this one. This ended up being more philosophical than I thought it would be, looking at it. But I don't know. I don't know whether you should bring back a dodo. I don't know whether you should bring back anything that's extinct, or attempt to. But anyway, let me know what you think. Is there a particular extinct species you would like brought back at some point or another? Not excluding the obvious answer of dinosaurs. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button on the way out the door, comment on the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, all that lovely good jazz. Until next time, I'm Adrian. May you stay curious.